Hello everybody, welcome to session 5 on how to build a time tracker application with ReExt. I am Andres Villalba, I am a sales engineer at Sencha, and today I will be your guide. Before we start, I would like to remind you that if you missed any of the previous sessions or you would like to learn more about React, XJS, or Sencha, you should visit our YouTube channel. Today, we are going to be talking about how to build the admin grid for our application. On the previous sessions, we have looked at ReExt in a general way. We have also worked some components with ReExt. We have created the navigation for our application, and we have created a login form and session management. Like I said, today we're going to be talking about the admin grid and the form panel to create new tasks. This will be a lot of work today, so we might not get to the form panel. If that's the case, I will include it on session 6. On session 6, we are also going to be talking about theming, meaning we're going to give style, color, themes to our applications. And after that, we're going to replicate what we did for the admin grid to create a user grid where we will get to track our time. And on session 8, we're going to build KPIs, we're going to build reports. And finally, on session 9, we're going to look at some select topics. Okay, so on this session, like I said, we're going to be building that time tracker grid. So we're going to learn how to create a complex grid with ReExt. We're going to learn how to create the store to get the data. And we're also going to add a few options. Some of them are filters and sorters. After that, we're going to create our own window. As a quick reminder, this is where we were at. We have a login form that validates the data that we're entering. When we click on view password, we can get to hide it or show it. Then we can click on login. This will communicate with the backend. It will validate our credentials, and if everything is correct, it will load the dashboard. Remember that this dashboard is actually fake. The information we're looking at has nothing to do with our application. Then we build a dummy admin tasks, which we will be changing today. So I'm gonna go back into our navigation file, and that's where I have the dashboard and the admin tasks. For now, I'm gonna move the admin tasks to the beginning of our application. That way, every time I refresh, I'm gonna get the admin tasks at the beginning. Okay, let's look at our code. So we have this admin grid. If you don't remember or you missed that session, what we did is we created a grid inside our source view grids folder. We call that admin grid. And here we have a ReExt component. It's X type, it's called grid. And just like every other component, we have a config property. And there we're setting up everything that has to do with our grid. So I just created some options at random. For example, we have a refresh button. We have an options menu on the right of the screen. We have a paging toolbar, and we also have 3 columns. So I'm gonna take them out for now. What exactly do we have? Well, if we take a look at our database, we have the following tables. We have activities, status, tasks, tasks tracker, user roles, and users. Users has some basic user information. So basically I created 5 users with some roles. I have a general administrator user, that's me. I have a manager, that's Kevin. And I have 3 users which their tasks are gonna be tracked. Then I have a fake phone number. I have a fake password with an MD5 hash. I have a token. Then I have a creation date. I have the first name, last name of the user, and if this user is active. Of course, this is a short version of a user table. I would have a lot more things like blog, last successful login, unsuccessful attempts, and things like that. And I wouldn't use only an MD5 hash. I would do something more complex like a JWT token, but for now, this will do. Like I said, we also have user roles, which basically we have a system administrator, we have a manager, and we have a user. Then we have activities. On those activities, we have a few options. As you can see here, we have 6 types of activities. We have an internal meeting, design work, production work, break, lunch, and a customer meeting. And we are telling the system that we have productive tasks and unproductive tasks. Depending on what we select, it's if that task is going to be charged to the client or not. And then we have an active flag so that we know if these are actually available activities. And we have an icon. This is going to be a font awesome icon, something to tell what kind of activity this is. Then we have a status table. So basically, when an admin user creates a task, that's going to go to the backlog. When the admin user assigns the task, that's going to be assigned. And then once a user starts their task, we're going to use the in progress status. If the user pauses the task, then that's going to become paused. And if the user finishes the task, that's going to become finished. And of course, we can cancel the task, and that's going to change the status to 6. Then we have the main 2 tables of our application. This is a work in progress. We might change something later when we're working on the actual tasks, but for now, this is what we have. So we have a tasks table. I have already created 20 random tasks yesterday. As you can see, they have a fake date. And basically, I'm just having a unique ID, who created this task, who is it assigned to, when it was created, which activity this is, then which status it's the current one, then if it's active or not, the estimated time in hours, and when this task should be finished. Of course, right now this is also fake. I'm not taking this actually into account, but later on I will change this to a more realistic date. And then each task can have an entry, at least one entry on task tracker. For example, task 1 has 3 entries there. It has 2 tasks with a status ID of 3, which is in progress, and one task tracker with a status ID of 4, which is paused. What we will be doing here is what I have over here. So I have this query on the backend, and instead of just getting the tasks, I am getting everything that you see here. So I'm getting everything that comes from the task table. I am also creating an admin name and a username by concatenating the user first name and last name and the admin first name and last name. I'm getting the user's phone number and email. I'm getting the status name, the color that belongs to that status. Then I have the activity icon. I have if the task is productive or not. I have the price for that kind of activity. And then I have the actual elapsed time, which only takes in mind only the in progress times. At the end, I am also multiplying the price by the elapsed time divided by 60, because this is minutes and I'm charging by the hour. So I divide this by 60 and multiply it by the price, and I get the invoiced amount. So this is the data we're gonna be showing on our grid. Some of it we will be hiding. So let's do just that. I'm gonna be taking all these columns over here and putting them in my grid. So this is how this works. Inside the columns array, I can go in and specify each of the columns. By default, the column it's just gonna be a basic text column. So I don't need to specify an X type. I'm gonna add some text. The text is the actual title or header. So I'm just gonna say task ID. Then I need a data index, and that's the name of the field as it comes from the backend. Then we can specify either a width or a flex value. So for now, I'm just gonna say this is 120 pixels. Then I'm gonna create another column, and I'm gonna call that admin name, meaning that's the person that created this task. And that's going to be data index, and the data index is going to be admin name. And I'm also going to give it a fixed width of 200 pixels, and I'm going to do the same for the next column. But in this case, this is going to be the user who's going to be performing the task. So I'm going to say username because that's the name of the on the backend. And I am also, for now, going to add the activity. So let me just copy and paste this. Here I'm just gonna say activity. On data index, I'm gonna put the activity ID. And you might say this is not correct. Let's wait for it. We'll check it in a second. And here I'm also going to put on the next one the actual status, and that's gonna be stats ID. Okay. If we test this, I mean, we're gonna have our columns, but no data. So it looks like this. We only have those columns there. Task ID, admin name, username, activity, and status. But we have no data. So what we have to do is actually create a store. Usually, if I'm using XJS, what I would do is create a separate file for the store. But because this is the first grid that we create, I'm just gonna put the store here. So I have to specify it inside my config property of the grid, okay? And I'm just gonna set up that store in this place. So there are a few things that I have to specify. The first is that I have to tell ReExt if I'm going to load everything or automatically, or I'm gonna have to call the method. So I'm just gonna say autoload true. And the most important property that we have to specify there is the proxy property. This is where we set up how our store is going to be communicating with the backend. So basically, I'm just specifying an Ajax type. I will specify a URL and also how everything is going to be read. So I have the URL saved over here. So let me just copy and paste. And I will also specify inside the reader what the root property is going to be and what the total property is also going to be. This is because all the data that comes from the backend will come under three options. It will have a root property where all the data is saved, like I just mentioned, a total property that will tell us how many registers we have or how many rows. Also, we'll get a success property where it will either come as true or false, letting us know if it worked correctly. But for now, this is all we need. I'm gonna add a few more things later. And here it is. This is the data that we have. Those are the 20 registers that we have. They are not sorted in any way. I can sort them if I want to here, but right now they are being sorted on the front end. That's why we get 1, 10, 11, 12, because it's the front end, the one performing the sort. And ReExt is looking at this as if this is text instead of a number. So let's tell ReExt that we should get the data sorted on the backend. That's simple. Let's just say remote sort true. And while we're at it, let's also say remote filter true. That way, the filters and the sorting will happen on the backend. Okay, we can also have here a page size. So let's say if I say 5, that's gonna tell the backend to only return to me 5 rows. But please take in mind that the backend has to be coded that way. So I have 5 rows here, and I can use the paging we created before on the other session. And I can also sort by any column. The backend that we built it's quite simple. So please take in mind that it doesn't have any security on it because I just wanted to show you the front end. Okay, let's go back to where I was. So now I have 25 rows, I have my store set up, and let's also see exactly what this is bringing. If I go and check on the DevTools what the network tab is showing, you can see that this is what it's bringing here. It's telling me the count, 20 rows, and the data, it's here. It's basically an array. So let's go on, let's continue getting more of the data on screen. So we have a task ID, admin name, username, activity, status. We said that we also have some other columns that we want to show. For example, we want to show also if the task is productive. So I'm just gonna copy this one over here. I'm gonna say productive, and I'm gonna put the corresponding data index. I'm gonna say this one is a lot shorter. Let's put an active column there too. Okay. And if you remember, we have a deadline date. So let's also put it here, deadline. That's called deadline date. And in this case, I am going to specify an X type, and I'm gonna say date column. Okay, that will make it easier to format this column. Then we have an estimated time and also the elapsed time. So over here, I'm gonna say estimated time, and here it is, estimated time. This is whatever the admin captured. And then we have elapsed time, and this is going to be calculated as we explained before. Okay, and finally we have the invoiced amount. You can say, hey, you had many other columns. Yes, I did, and I'm going to use them, but not as their unique column. We'll take a look at that in a few minutes. So this is what we have right now. It's not perfect, but this is what we're showing. Probably I'm gonna make deadline a little bit wider. I'm gonna say this is actually 150 pixels. Okay, so what we are going to do next, it's actually change the activity value in the actual text. You can say, well, why didn't you just create an activity column with the actual value? What I mean by that, instead of having activity ID there, you could have had the actual column, meaning just activity. And yeah, of course, that's going to work. We're gonna have it here. And I can still have some filters here and make it work. But I want the actual ID here because that will make it easier to filter. In a second, we're gonna be looking at filters and I'm gonna put a list filter here, and it works a lot better if I have the ID instead of the text. So let me continue formatting all the other columns, and then we will talk about this one. So I'm gonna leave activity there, and I'm also going to create activity ID for now. In reality, I'm gonna take the first one out and just leave this one in. But I want to put both there so that you can see the difference. So if you remember on the database, I have an activity ID, an activity, and an icon. And I want to show the text and the icon here. So for that, I can use the renderer function. This one is quite interesting because it allows me to change what the cell is going to be showing. So what it receives, it's the actual value. Then it receives the actual cell, and it receives the complete record or row from the store, meaning it doesn't receive the row on the table, on the grid, it receives it from the store. Whatever I return here, let's say if I say return hello, that's what it's going to be showing. So if I go back and we take a look at it, instead of showing the activity ID, it's going to be showing the text hello. So basically what this allows me to do is to put any kind of JavaScript code here and come up with something different. So for example, even though I'm on activity ID and the value on the store is still the activity ID, I can return row data and include here the activity name. And that's what I'm returning right now. If we check that out, they look the same now, even though internally this is the actual ID. So let's say that I want to show also the icon. Well, I can put HTML here. So I can add a span tag. Then I can specify a CSS class. If I'm going to be using font awesome, I can do it like this. And let's say I want to put the icon I specified on the backend. So that comes from row data icon. So we test this out. Now it will look like this. We have a specific icon for each one. Okay. And that's not all that we can do. Let's do something similar for the actual status. So we have also a renderer, but this time instead of including an icon, gonna change the color. It also comes from the backend. So basically I'm just gonna add row data color. Okay, and that's going to change the color of my text since I'm gonna wrap it around with the actual span. Okay, instead of activity, I'm gonna be returning the actual status. And maybe instead of a span, I'm just gonna add bold. Let's just test it out again. And now I have that status here with the color that I specified before. So as you can see, it's pretty simple to actually give it this format. Okay, now apart from that, let's do the same thing. Well, a similar thing though for productive. So In this case, I'm not going to return the value or some other column. What I'm going to do is check if the value is 1, I'm going to return productive. Otherwise, I'm going to return unproductive. Okay? And let's do something similar for active. There, I'm gonna return active or hidden. We take a look at it. This is how it looks. I only have one hidden task. But now you can say, wait, first, that's not hidden. It's in my grid. And second, it looks the same. It's hard to tell. Okay, then we're gonna do something extra. Two things. One, we're gonna paint the whole row a different color to make it visible. And then I'm gonna show you how to add filters. And we're gonna have a default filter here so that it only shows the active tasks. Okay, so let's first change the color of the whole row. So for this, we have to do a few things. The first one, it's we have to create a CSS style. So I already went ahead and I created inside my resources folder a style sheet. So I went into my resources folder, I created this file. Basically, I just created two different classes, one for unproductive tasks and the other one for inactive. All I did is that I specified a background color. Just as any other application, I went into my index.html and I loaded that style, okay, that style sheet. So now that I have that part inside my grid, I added a view config. This property allows me to do plenty of things. If you want to learn more, please visit Sencha's documentation. For now, all I'm going to do is change the class, the CSS class for the row. So I'm overwriting this method that the view reads and changes the style. So it receives the row, it receives the row index, the row params, and the store. So basically what I'm going to be doing for now, I'm gonna check if the row is active. So row data active equals 1. Then it means this is an active task. Just gonna return an empty string. Otherwise, I'm gonna return an inactive class. Okay, let's test it out. And as you can see now, that row that it's supposed to be hidden, it's now a different color. Okay, now let's say that we want to add filters. Well, first we need to specify ReExt that we are going to be using them. Anywhere inside the config, we can add plugins. One of the plugins is the one that allows us to use grid filters. So I'm just gonna say grid filters true. This is going to allow me to create these filters, but it's not gonna activate them. If I want to use filters, I need to specify on each column which columns do actually have filters. If I want task ID to have a filter, I have to specify filter column number, okay? So now if I click on this drop down menu, here I have the option to filter. Let's say that I only want to look at row 8. And there it is. It's gonna filter and just show me that one. Okay, and now let's say that we want to search for anything below 15, and that's gonna work, or between 10 and 15. Okay, and we can deactivate the filter. Now, for admin name, I'm going to do something similar, but I'm gonna tell ReExt that I want to search a string. I'm going to do the same for username. Let's take a look at it. Now over here, if I type part of my name, it's gonna search for that. Okay, of course, on the back end, I'm using a like statement for my query. What about activity? We said that we want a list there. Okay, let's do that. What we do, it's the same thing for now, because we're gonna change it in a sec. Let's say that we want this as a list. I'll just type list. And I'm gonna do something similar for date. I'm just gonna type date there, okay? Okay, now if we check, now the list filter will be working and it allows us to check more than one option. And the date is gonna work exactly as the number. So we can select just one date or we can select a range. So let's say that we want a default filter. We don't want to show that hidden row there, so we're gonna add that default filter. That's actually quite easy to do. All we have to do is instead of just specifying the actual filter type, so instead of just saying filter and saying Boolean in this case, what we're gonna do is specify a structure. So what we're gonna do is just specify the type like this, and we can add a value. So if I want to show everything that it has a value of 1, I can do it just like this. So as you can see, that column has a filter already. I can go in and deactivate that. Okay, so that's an easy way to put a filter value. If we look at activities, right now it's showing these 5 options here. What happens if instead of loading 25 rows, I load only 5? We take a look at it, I'm only seeing 2 types of activities. And then I am only getting the filters for those 2. And that's not what I want. What I want is to have all the available options here. So that's also easy to do. Instead of having the list here like that, we're also going to add a type. Instead of just having it like this, we can also specify a store, and we're going to set up that store. I'm gonna copy this for now, and let's put that store there. It's not going to be exactly the same. Why? Because although it's going to auto load, I don't care about filters. I don't care about page size. And instead of loading the tasks, is going to be loading filters get activities. And also I need to specify a couple of more things. So inside of the filter, I must tell what the ID field is and also what the label field is. Okay, so I know that from the backend, the ID field is going to be activity ID and the label field is going to be activity. And let's test this out. So now I have all the filters here, but there's going to be an issue. Let's click on break. See, nothing happened. I mean, nothing correctly happened. Everything got hidden. Why? Well, because this is sending the ID for design to the backend instead of sending the word design. That's why I set up this other column. So I'm gonna take that filter and I'm going to move it into activity ID and I'm gonna take the old activity out. And let's see if that works better. So now if I go on filter, you can see that I have several options. And if I click on break, it's going to show that one. Okay, that's why I am using the ID instead of the actual text. So let me take that page size out so that we can look at everything now. Okay, so that's working as we expected it now. So basically, I'm just gonna copy that filter. I'm gonna put it inside status. And that's going to be loading from get status. And I'm also going to change it here so that it matches what I need. Let's see if that works. So have the filters here and they work. Okay, so let's go into productive and let's add a filter there. So I'm just gonna type filter and over here I'm just gonna say Boolean because if you remember productive, it's just a Boolean value. And right now it's showing yes and no, which is fine. I'm gonna add a few more options to format. For example, right now we have estimated time as hours and we have elapsed time as minutes. So I'm gonna divide this by 60. So if we go to elapsed time, I'm gonna add another renderer. I'm gonna ignore all the other parameters. I'm just gonna keep the first one, which is value. And basically I'm just going to return value divided by 60. I'm gonna use a helper function which is ext.util, as in utility format. And then I'm gonna tell it to format this as a number, and I'm going to add 2 decimals. And while I'm at it, I'm gonna do the same for invoiced amount, of course, without dividing it. And I'm also going to add at the beginning just a dollar symbol. And let's try it out. And let's see how this looks. Okay, I'm gonna add one more column that I forgot to add. I'm gonna add the price per hour. So hourly cost, I'm gonna put price here. Okay, so basically it's estimated to take 2 hours. It actually took 11, and we charged $120 per hour, and that's the actual amount that we calculated. So this basically it's our admin grid. We're gonna add a few more options. Basically, I'm gonna lock the first columns, and I am also going to add an action column. So let's see how we do that. To create an action column, basically I just create another column. I'll give it an X type. Of course, it's going to be action column there. And then I can add some items. Here, I can specify an icon. I can specify some text. I'm gonna create these actions just as basic icons. So I'm just gonna add some icon CLS, and I'm just gonna use font awesome. So basically I'm gonna add edit button. I'm gonna add a tooltip, and then I'm gonna have a handler, which basically receives some parameters, which is the actual grid, the row index, and the column index, okay? And here I'm going to open an edit window. And the other action column that I'm gonna have is quite similar, but this one is going to be an edit, sorry, a delete button. And instead of opening an edit window, I'm gonna open a confirm window. This window does receive a title, so I'm gonna say delete, and then I'm gonna say, are you sure? I can add a callback function that receives one parameter, which is the button that was clicked. And if that button was yes, then I will delete. Otherwise, the window will close and nothing will happen. I can go in and just use XJS or ReExt to create this window. So for now, let me just create a window. To do that with ReExt, we can do it with this method. It receives the class for a window. This is xWindow.window. Inside, I can specify a title. Let's say edit row. I can specify a width, a height, whatever I need. Let's say 400 pixels by 500. I can tell ReExt that this is going to be a model window, and I have to save this window in a variable. Why? Because after I create the window, I need to show it. Also, if I want to reuse that window, here it is. Say right now this is an edit row window, but let's say I want to use that same window for add new, then it's not a good idea to put it there because I would have to change both windows in case I added a new column. So what I would do instead, it's go into my where is it? Into my public folder and into my custom folder inside of it. And here I can create XJS classes. So for example, I created edit window.jsx, and here I have this window. Notice that I'm specifying the class name. That class name must match the name of my project. This is the name that I used at the beginning on the first session to create my project. This is the name of the class. And then I can specify from which class I'm going to extend. I can give it the same title, the width, height, and model, and whatever else I may need. But how does ReExt know that it should load this file? Well, for that, I must go into my main file over here. We have these two new options. You need to download the latest ReExt version to get those two working. Here I can specify the custom folder. So right now I am using custom inside the public folder, but if I wanted it to be something else, I can specify it here. And then every class that I want to add, I must specify it here. If I had several files, I would just add a comma and specify the next one. And now that I'm working this way, I can use that to create my window. I can add an X type, time tracker, edit window. Now, inside my project, instead of creating a window this way, what I would be calling it's my new class, tt_app.edit window. And since I have specified all of that inside my edit window over here, I don't need to specify it anymore. What I would do here is actually something different. I would send the row. So maybe row data, and I would send that actual row. For now, I'm just gonna send an empty object. And if I do it this way, then I can get this function. And inside my new button that I have over here, I can also add that handler and have the same method. I will specify here the title, new row, new task, let's say. And by the default, it's going to be edit task. Let us take a look at that. And now if I hit here, that's the edit task window. If I click over here, that's the new task window. So we are reusing that same component. Let's do the next part. It's actually creating that edit panel. So over here, if I'm going to create an edit window, I must specify a layout and I must specify the items that live inside this window. So for now, let me just create a basic text field. Let's add a value and let's add a name to that. Let's just say this is, I don't know, example. Gonna change that in a few minutes. And let's paste. Just call example one, example two, and let's leave that as a B box. So let's add a field label. I'm just gonna call this field one for now. And the other one is going to be field two. Okay, this is, like I said, this is just an example. So let's just say that this has a width of 100% so that it looks a little bit better. And if we take a look at that, it will look something like this. From what we have learned before, we can add a body padding to add some margin inside of the window. We can also add a toolbar at the bottom. It could be buttons, it could be B bar. Remember that any toolbar, I can add this special character over here to move the buttons to the right. And here I'm just going to add a button that says save and close, and another one that only says cancel. Okay, so that's one, and the other one over here, which will say cancel. Okay, and I must specify that these are buttons. So if you have used XJS before, this will look quite similar to what you have done before. Okay, so I got those two buttons. If you want to use buttons instead, you can do it. That would be just like that, buttons. That way you don't need to specify the X type, and the toolbar will look a little bit different. It will look like this. So it's quite simple to create. Let's just finish this window. So basically, I'm just going to add those fields that I have under my tasks table. The first field that I have is who created the task. That, of course, is going to be me. But for now, I'm gonna allow the user to actually select it. So created by, then we're gonna have the assign to field. Creation date must be automatic, so I'm not gonna put it there anyways. Then we have activity, going to be activity, sorry, I forgot, assign to, created by. Then we're gonna allow the user to capture the estimated time. Let's say by default 1 hour. And this is going to be actually a number field. And then we're gonna add a delivery date. So that's going to be a date field, which is gonna be the deadline date. And here I'm just gonna say new date. Okay, I'm gonna change all those in a second, all of those. But let's take a look at them as they are. So this is how it looks right now. Okay, so I have a number field, I have a date field, and all the other ones look like text for now. So instead of having them show up as text, what I'm going to do is turn them into combo boxes. So this is going to be a combo box. Same deal with text field, I mean with assign to, and same deal with activity. So let's go on and add their stores. So to not complicate things over, what I'm going to do is just copy the store that I have for the filters, for one of the filters. That'll make it easier for us. So let's just grab this one. Gonna copy, gonna paste over here. And now I'm just gonna change that to get users. Everything else is the same inside of the store, but I must add a few things. The combo box needs a display field property. I know that from the backend, from this endpoint, the display data will come from full name and a value field, which is the ID. And I know that's going to be user ID. Now, this will display the combo box. But if I start typing, it won't search because this is going to try to search the actual value on the backend, but I don't have anything set up for the backend. So what I would do is I would add query mode and I would say local. What will happen is that this is going to bring all the users and it's going to search for the user locally. So let's see how this is working. So add new, and now I have the list there. But if I start typing, you can see that it's actually searching for the user I typed. Okay, so I'm just gonna copy everything here, and I'm going to put that inside of assign to. It's basically the same thing. And on activity, instead of doing it this way, what I will do is I will do it as remote. Okay, this is going to be get activities, and I will specify the actual parameter that will perform the search. And this is just specified by query param. This is the name of the property that will perform the search on the backend. So this depends how you have it set up there. For now, I'm just gonna call this queue. And of course, let's take those values out. And of course, also display name is not gonna be full name, it's going to be activity. And the value field, of course, is going to be activity ID. Now that we have that, let's actually go and test this out. So let's click on add new and let's type break. As you can see, it searches for it, but only when we have more than 3 characters. Okay, if we want to change that, we can do it. This is just to avoid calling the backend all the time. So we can say min chars and just saying 1. That way it will search right away when I start typing. So if I type B, there it is. Okay, so this will be a lot faster. So now we have those 3 combo boxes set up, we have the estimated time, and we have the deadline date, okay, which is what we need at the beginning. We can create more fields, maybe some display fields, so that when you select an activity, you display the actual hourly rate and the productive or unproductive flag. Okay, but for now, let's leave them like it is. And let's do the same for edit task. But this time, let's get what we have on the row and let's put it here as data. So let's go back to our admin grid. And if you remember over here, we said that we were going to send the data so that we can edit that data on the window. And for this, we're gonna get the data here. So let's call this raw data. And the way I'm gonna get it is from the grid. I'm gonna get the store from it. And let's get the current row index. This is going to have the raw data, and that's what I'm going to send. So basically, I'm just going to send the raw data here. Okay. And on the new option over here, raw data is empty. Okay. So now the edit window, we can add a property right at the end, which is the constructor, and it's called init component. If we are using the classic toolkit, it's init component. If we are using the modern toolkit, it's initialize instead. Okay, that's a little bit of a difference depending on what we're doing. And over here, when we use this method, we have to call the parent method, meaning we have to explicitly call the init component from the main class, from the one we are extending. And when we do that, the window is gonna get created, not displayed, just created. So if I type anything here before the call parent, we can modify what we want from these fields down here. If we do it after the call parent, then we can use XJS methods to modify the data. So it depends on what we want to do. Those are two different ways, okay? So for example, if I wanted to get one of the fields over here, I need an ID. So I'm gonna be using item ID to give a name to each of the fields. It's different from the actual name. Remember that the name is the variable name that will be sent to the backend. Item ID instead, it's the name that we're gonna use instead inside of ReExt. So let me just put those there. And finally this one. Okay, so let me just show you how to get the data. Let's get one field. So if I type this and then I say get component, this will get me the component with item ID name that I specify here. For example, deadline date. That's gonna be saved under field. And then if I wanted to, I could say set the value or get the value or do whatever I want. So this is what I'm going to be doing. So basically, I'm just going to get all those fields and put the value in them. There are different ways to do it. I could have also gotten the actual items array and loop through those and then set the value. But right now I wanted to be as clear as possible and not complicate this. So I will be setting up the value here from what I got from the admin grid. So if you remember, over here, I'm sending everything inside raw data. So I'm also going to have this raw data dot deadline date. Okay. Of course, I have to make sure that I'm actually receiving this parameter here. So, like I said, this is not the best way to do it, but I just want to be fast. So I'm just gonna check if this parameter is actually defined, then go on. Okay, I could have also set something a little bit more simple. Instead, under new, I could have said null. So I can just check this. If raw data is different than null, then set all the fields. Otherwise, just don't do anything. And I almost forgot, sorry, over here I'm not sending just raw data, I'm actually sending the data inside of this object, okay? And that should get the data a lot more directly. And since this is a date, I would actually just create a date object there, okay? Let's add all the fields. So we have created by, we have assigned to, activity ID, estimated time, and deadline date. So created by, assigned to, activity ID, estimated time, and deadline date, and all of those should be direct values. So let's take that out. So this should be created by assigned to activity ID and estimated time. Before actually testing, let's just make sure that everything is fine. Assigned to, oh, this should be activity ID because that's what we're sending to the backend. Estimated time and deadline date. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's test that. And now as you can see, we have everything ready there. So let's click on a different one and there it is. And we click on new, it's empty now. Okay, so we can work through this quite simple. What I'm going to do next, it's actually add the option to close the window. Okay, we're running out of time, so probably that's all I'm going to do for today. On the next session, I will actually set up the option to save and delete all the changes. So on save and close, I'm just gonna close this window. So let's do it. Just as before, whenever I'm working inside a function, this function belongs to the button. So if I say this, I'm getting the button, but I want the actual window. So I'm gonna use up, and for that, I'm gonna get it like this. Okay, I'm just gonna say close. Same thing with cancel, at least for now. Okay, let's try it out. If I open that window, cancel closes the window, and the same deal with save and close. Okay, what we are missing here, of course, it's performing the actual save, and then we already have the close action. And apart from that, there are a few things that I mentioned that I'm gonna be doing that I haven't done yet. Um, I mentioned that I wanted to lock the first columns, so I'm just gonna say locked through to lock the task ID. Same thing with the admin name, the username, and the activity. If I try that out, now you will be able to see that those columns are locked. So if the grid becomes smaller, you'll see that those columns there are locked. Okay, and that's quite easy to do as you just saw. Also, if you want, sorry, when this is working, you can move any of the columns to the locked part or to the unlocked side of the grid. If you don't want that, I'm just gonna say lockable equals false. And what that's going to do is that that won't allow me to move it between one side and the other. Okay. For now, I'm just gonna take this out. Okay. There's also something else that I wanted to show you. For now, all the columns are sortable. That's fine. That's what we want. But let's say that you don't want the user to be able to sort by, I don't know, by active. So you can just say sortable false. That's what that's going to do. It's going to remove the option to sort by that column. An actual place that I don't want to be able to sort, it's the action column, because by default it does offer the option to sort, even though it doesn't work. So if I don't want the menu there, so I'm just gonna say menu disabled true, and let's take that other example out. Okay, this will remove the menu to sort. So let's just see it. And now the action column doesn't have a menu and doesn't allow me to sort. Okay, oh, I missed activity. That's still locked. So let's unlock that one here. And also one last thing, if I want to hide a column, I can say hidden true, okay? And if I don't want the users to be able to hide or unhide a column, I just say hideable false. That way, I won't be able to hide and show that column. So as you can see right now, task ID was hidden, and I can hide every other column, but not admin name. Okay, so we are still missing a few things. Like I said, we're missing the actual edit action. I'm gonna add a new field, which is a text area, so that we can add some notes. I'm gonna do that as homework, and I will show it to you on the next session. I will also add the action to delete a row, and I'm gonna take out that refresh because we already have one at the bottom. So for now, this is everything that I can show you. The next session, I will be talking a lot more about this grid, and I will also talk about theming. So thank you again. Let's move on to our quick session of questions and answers. Okay, like I said, I just finished today's session. I went a little bit over the time I had prepared. But if you have any questions, please leave them in the question panel. Um, Next week, I'm going to be talking about how to theme the application. I have been asked several times how to change colors, how to change font types, and different things like that. So on the next session, I'm going to be covering that. I'm also going to finish, like I said, this grid and form panel. And after that, I'm going to be working with the other grid, which basically is the user grid. And that one, it's going to be a little bit more complex. Of course, we're going to grab what we just did to create that other grid, but that's the one that is actually going to track our time. So let's see if we have any questions here. Okay, once again, just talking, asking us about design. Somebody else asking me about charts. Yes, we're gonna talk about charts later on the last two sessions. We're gonna be creating KPIs, so we're gonna create simple charts. And if you have any idea of something special that you want me to create, I can also create that. So so yes, answering your question, Robert, we're gonna create charts by the end of these tutorial sessions. Okay, I think that's it by now. We're out of time. I see a few more questions, but they're kind of hard to solve in just 1 minute. So what I got here, I will implement in the next webinar. I hope to see you soon. I hope you liked today's session. If you have any comments or questions, once again, feel free to leave them here. Also, this session is going to be available on YouTube later, and I will be posting the code on GitHub either today or tomorrow, and I'll tell everybody the actual URL on the next session. Once again, thank you and see you soon.